Well, a lot of big companies like J.P. Morgan Chase and Starbucks are patting themselves on the backs for raising, in some cases doubling, the minimum wage for their low-end workers. But what about smaller mom-and-pop operations for whom a doubling in labor costs could wipe out their already small profit margins? For details, I welcome Apple Metro Chairman and CEO Zane Tankel. Now, Zane, you're not a mom-and-pop franchise. You got quite a few of these things, right. But you know these mom-and-pop operations well. Yeah. Their labor costs are much larger a percent of their operational costs than the big companies. They can afford to do it much less well or less easily than Starbucks or J.P. Morgan.
You're right, David, but I hate to quarrel with you, and I never do. It's scalable. It's just proportionate. For example, the wage increase this year cost us $5 million. There's only two places it comes from: price, and the whole space, be it fast casual dining, is bumping their head on price. Consumer doesn't.
But here's my point. The political argument for doubling, in some cases, the minimum wage is basically saying this is to help out the little guy. But the little guy mom and pop stores are getting killed by this. Are they
lying.
not?
It's lying. Absolutely. Everybody's getting killed by it. But then it's not just. I can name the EEOC, DOL, NLRB. It's a whole new alphabet of names. Affordable Care Act, the ACA. It's not just minimum wage. That would be not really being factually correct. It comes from, it's incoming, air, land, sea, from all directions.
So it's all the regulations, but this is one that is so blanketed.
Unconscionable.
And again, if some people get into high office, there is going to be a move for a nationwide doubling of the minimum wage. What's that going to do to
car crash? I can name you, just in the last 10 days, 7 restaurant companies that have gone out of business, David. That is thousands of employees. I know we're talking about Washington, D.C. and Seattle, but Johnny Carino's Hometown Buffet, Champs, CHAMPPS, Ruby Tuesdays closed 105 restaurants in the last week.
It's interesting you mentioned Seattle, because, of course, Seattle had a big increase. They didn't double their minimum wage, but a big increase in minimum wage. And there was just a study that was done. The Washington Post reported on it, that despite all of the calculations that this would increase dramatically the wages, look at what happened. The unintended consequences, it resulted in either a $5.50 gain per week or a reduction of $5.20 a week. So there's very inconclusive evidence that this really does end up with more change in a worker's pocket.
There is conclusive evidence. I'm sorry, conclusive evidence, because if you look at where does that money come from to pay those increases? Comes from their fellow entry-level employees. And I don't call it minimum wage. It's the beginning of your life's task. It's not, there's no minimum wage. It's entry-level. We all entered somewhere, and I don't want to be talking in hyperbole, as our election cycle says, and say everybody started in a restaurant business. But there are many, many, many top corporate...
I did. I started washing dishes.
Many top corporate executives. Well, you're a classical example. It starts there. It gives you character. It gives you guts. It gives you a discipline.
Okay. That may be gone. Zane Tankel, good to see you, my friend.
Thanks, David.
Thank you very much.